Welcome to Nice J with JJ Smith. As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for joining. We appreciate every listener we have. Today, we're going to do a little quarter season report, a little Q1 on the NBA season so far. We're already 25% of the way through the season, and there are definitely some things to talk about. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Another public service announcement from Brill Cream. Men, beware. Use one dab of Brill Cream. Just a little dab makes your hair look excitingly clean, disturbingly healthy. This man dared to use 2 dabs. Now he's in trouble. We refuse to be responsible.
Brill Cream, Brill Cream, Brill Cream. Brill Cream, a little dab will do ya. Brill Cream, you look so debonair. Brill Cream, the gals will all pursue ya. They'll love to get their fingers in your hair.
There you have it. Be careful with that second dab, fellas. One dab will do you. All right, the first thing that stands out to me this season, 25% of the way through, is something that not a lot of people know about. It's called PER. And PER is the player efficiency rating. That was created by John Hollinger's kind of calculations. It's an all-in-one basketball rating which attempts to collect or boil down all of a player's contributions into one number. Using a detailed formula, Hollinger developed this system to rate every player's statistical performance. And if you don't know, John Hollinger is an analyst for The Athletic currently, former ESPN guy as well, former Grizzlies VP, and also the writer of a recent article about Cooper Flagg that I have a little bit of umbrage with, but all-around smart basketball guy. But what is player efficiency rating, or PER? It's designed to capture how productive a player is on a per-minute basis with key adjustments made for how fast their team plays. The system is calibrated so that the league average is always set at 15. It's important to know, making it easier to compare players from different years. So PER blends together a wide range of box score stats. It rewards things like made shots, assists, rebounds, steals, blocks, while deducting for missed attempts, turnovers, and fouls, all the bad stuff. After the formula tallies the player's contributions and mistakes, it scales the result to reflect a per-minute impact. It allows for fair comparisons between high-minute starters and bench players, so you can kind of compare players that are really hard to compare. And the final score offers one summary number meant to represent a player's overall statistical value for that team. It's a really good, relatively new stat, but it's pretty key, and you can go backwards and kind of evaluate previous seasons as well. So why do I bring this up? Currently in the NBA, we have not 1, not 2, but 3 players hovering around all-time PERs this season so far. Yes, it's early, but it seems a little nuts. We have Nikola Jokic at 35.41. We have Giannis at 34.91, and Shea around 33.1. Those would be all above the all-time career PER leaders. Nikola Jokic, obviously, may not be obvious. He has the record for a season at 28.8. Michael Jordan, 27.9. LeBron James, 26.9. Anthony Davis, these are for careers, 26.8. And Shaquille O'Neal, 26.4. Those are really high numbers, and those 3 players, John Shea and Joker, have numbers that would beat all of that. Now, these are great players having great seasons, clearly. But one component that could be a separate point probably altogether, there's a composing stat of free throw attempts for each of these players, or free throws made. Free throws are free points in this PER calculation, right? So it directly adds to a player's total points without using field goal attempts, which boosts the PER scoring component. These 3 players are also in the top 10 free throw attempts in the season. So we have Shea at 2, Giannis at 3, and Joker is much lower. He's at 14. So you could make the case that his PER is less dependent on foul shooting than certainly the first 2. But I would say that, I'm not suggesting that these players aren't great, but I am suggesting that their free throws may be getting a historically friendly free throw rate call from the refs. Is Shea an amazing player who tricks and fools defenders nightly with a bag almost every other All-Star wish they had? Yes. But does he get a lot of foul shots that he may not quite deserve? I would say also yes. I think the stats back that up too. Same for Giannis. Same, but less so for Joker. The season started out with exceptionally high free throw attempts in the first few weeks of the season. That usually regresses, and that's been the case this season. But let's watch these PERs. Let's watch the free throw attempts for these players and see if they go back to something normal. I would suggest that if they don't, it is likely tied to these, I think in some cases, excessive free throw attempts and friendly calls these players are getting early on in the season. There's going to be pushback. There's going to be some adjustment. But we're seeing something historic with these three players in particular and how the game is being called and measured. So that's something that sticks out to me. A more fun thing that sticks out to me is 94 feet. That's the length of the NBA basketball court. This year, we're seeing more and more teams pressuring defenses the entire length of the court in an attempt to wear out opposing offenses. We see this here in AZ with the Suns. Part of the reason for their early success is an increased intensity in defense, more pressure early, less time on the shot clock for the other team, and punishing the league's best playmakers so they are more tired when it matters later in a game. I've seen this a lot where the players are scoring pretty well in the first, second, maybe even the third quarter, but by the fourth quarter, they're gassed. It's happened quite a bit with the Suns teams that they've played so far. The Athletic reported, and again, this is from our buddy John Hallinger. It's his second appearance already. He noticed something after the very first game of the season. Atlanta pressured Toronto full court and ended up winning that game by 20, 138 to 118 on opening night. And he said that he, kind of expressed a little bit of surprise to a Toronto player that the Raptors were committing to playing 94 feet, even against Trae Young. And that player said, especially against Trae Young. So he was corrected. He said, the point is all the ball pressure is actually more valuable against the league's more dangerous ball handlers because it allows defenses to wear them out during the course of a 48-minute game. And I think that was a harbinger of things to come because that's what a lot of teams are doing now. The trend is sort of breaking the gentleman's agreement against playing this hard all game long so early in the season. It feels more like a college game, obviously more skilled, but players playing full tilt from the jump. We've always had this sort of mutual assured destruction policy of deterrence. If you don't play this way, we won't play this way, and we'll all make it to play 82 games this season. Somehow that has been given up, and the games are, in my opinion, more exciting to watch, and it puts players who can apply and handle the pressure better at a premium. We're seeing traditional point guards getting some appreciation in this environment too. Personally, I like it. Steal rates in the first few weeks are beyond the norm, though they've settled back a little bit down to average. That's usually around 8 steals per 1,000 possessions, suggesting that teams are starting to adjust to it. But this will impact things that stats can't really report on. Who's tugging on their shorts in the fourth quarter. I saw Luka doing this in the most recent Lakers-Suns game, and while he certainly got his in the first part of the game, he was clearly gassed in the second half. This is really fun from a fan standpoint. There's nothing better than the game being intense and defense being notched up. And the pace picking up because of it. Now, this isn't tied together necessarily, but one of the things that we've seen so far this season is viewership and fan support, big increases across the board. The NBA is off to a huge start this season. In just the first month, national games on, it's NBC Peacock, Amazon Prime, and ESPN. Those are the three platforms. They've already pulled in over 60 million viewers. That's the league, and this was in the first month. That's the league's best opening month in over 15 years. And that doesn't even count the 11-12 season that launched the Christmas Day tradition, which was always a big thing. So that not a bad way to kick off NBA's new 11-year, $76 billion media deal. The buzz isn't just on TV, though. The NBA content has racked up more than 30 billion views across social platforms. And of course, this is NBA reporting this part, and that would be a record pace. But merch sales on NBAstore.com are up 20%, fueled by the league's wave of next-gen stars. You got SGA, Anthony Edwards, Wemby, Maxey, Cooper Flag, Brunson, and Doncic, just to name a few. League Pass is growing too. Subscriptions are up 10%, and people watching 8% more than last year. And then fans are showing up in person. Attendance is basically matching last year, which was already the second best year ever. And arenas are sitting at about 97% full on average. 10 teams have sold out every home game so far. including the Celtics, Warriors, Knicks, and Heat, Suns, and a handful of others. A few teams like Atlanta and Charlotte have boosted their numbers by nearly 10% as well, despite perhaps a less than stellar product on the court. So things are looking up for the NBA in their first year of their media deal. Let's go through the standings on the East and Western side and just kind of give you a little bit of a summary of the important teams and where they sit. The East, things started out kind of wild. It was a little bit upside down for a while, but things have settled down a little bit. Let's see how the Eastern Conference is doing and give everybody a little bit of a report card. Sitting at the top of the conference are the Detroit Pistons. A lot of people are saying they're surprised by this. I think last year was the surprise. They made a big jump last year. They were competitive. They fought hard. That was the surprising year. I think this year, the only surprise is just how consistent they've been. And they've done it despite losing an important player in Beasley early on to legal trouble. They replaced him with Robinson and LeVert. And those players probably aren't as good, but they, together with everybody else, they're playing better as a team. They're winning consistently, both home and away. And they just have a maturity that is a little bit beyond their years. I think the big deals are taking the personality of their best player, Cade Cunningham, who in a lot of cases just refuses to lose. Recently had a really big bucket, tough bucket, like split 4 players, 2 at a time for a monster layup around the other side of the rim. And he's leading that team. I expect Detroit to maybe settle in the 3rd or 4th place as the season goes on. But the longer they can hang on to that number 1 spot in the East, the more teams are going to have to start worrying out in the East. The New York Knicks, they're sitting at 14-7. Not bad. A little up and down. Unlike the Pistons, they're a little bit worse on the road than home. Usually a little concerning. They're performing significantly better at Madison Square Garden, scoring more points and having a higher field goal percentage. Usually that suggests some struggles or inconsistency. Can they rectify it? Yes. Is it early? Yes. But 25% of the way through, they're going to have to do a lot better on the road to stay where they are. I'm a big fan of the Knicks and how they play. We talked about this early in the season. Deeper rotation, more ball movement. Love how the ball finds the right player all the time. And when they get stuck, they still have Brunson to get a big bucket. So the Knicks are going to be fine. It's just a matter of where they fall and who they end up playing in the playoffs in the East. They're gonna be a tough out for sure. One of the teams that I think are the most surprising, they sit 3rd at 15-8, are the Toronto Raptors. I think that this one might be a little bit of fool's gold. They have the 2nd easiest schedule in the league, according to ESPN's metrics. And 7 of their 15 wins have come against the Pacers, Nets, Wizards, Hornets, and Grizzlies, who had a combined record of 23-74 entering this past week. So maybe the Raptors are this good, but the statistics would suggest that while they may be good, they're not this good. So I expect them to drop a little bit in the East as well. The Heat are perhaps one of the more interesting teams because of the way they're playing. The Heat made a significant offensive shift towards faster paced, increased ball movement, more 3-point attempts, but really the big thing, less reliance on traditional ball screens. So they're aiming for collective effort and spacing and utilizing their players like Norman Powell and Bam Adebayo in a more dynamic way while integrating their young talent and managing Tyler Hero's return from injury. So it's been an unconventional start to the season, but I think this may be a roadmap for a different style of play. We know their coach is great, but this is a huge departure, and they're using far fewer ball screens per possession than usual, making them a little bit of an NBA outlier in that respect. They're 14-8. I think they have a good case of kind of hanging right where they are. In this new style of play, but less reliance on the ball screens up at the top, I think is something to keep an eye on and see how successful they are for it. The Boston Celtics, we all expected them to struggle without Tatum, of course. Some earlier, people thinking they were even going to just tank and kind of lick their wounds for a season, but they've been outperforming expectations for sure. They remain dangerous. And really, all that credit goes to Jaylen Brown. He went off for 42 points against the Knicks on Tuesday. They got another impressive win. They've won 8 out of their last 10. And Brown has always had to play second fiddle, going way back to like Isaiah Thomas and Kyrie Irving, but of course now to Tatum. And now with the opportunity to be the guy, he seems capable of handling that for sure. He's played every game so far this season, averaging 29 points, 6 boards, and 4.8 assists while shooting at almost 50% from the field, 49.9. He's posting career highs in both scoring and assists, of course. That makes sense. And ranks 7th in the league in points per game. Following Tuesday night's performance, Brown had already logged 3 40-point games. That's the best he's done in a single season, an entire single season, and places him 4th in the NBA in that category. So to say that Jaylen Brown has stepped up is an understatement. He's the reason that the Celtics are sitting at 13-9 and staying afloat. Orlando Magic, they got off to an iffy start, but now they look about as good as everyone expected them to be. Their defense isn't just keeping the opponents in check, it's actively kind of helping to fuel their offensive set and transition. They've cracked the top 10 in the league both defensively and offensively. That's a rare combo, and that's also a sign of a playoff team, generally. The idea they're getting stops, forcing turnovers, and then to turn those stops into easy buckets in transition. Their sister team in the West would be the Suns for sure, very similar in that regard. Under Coach Mosley, Orlando has leaned into this philosophy of transition. They start off 1-4, but now they've won 12 of their last 16, largely because their defense has started to create these extra possessions and getting teams, getting easy offense off those teams' turnovers. The Sixers, they were one of the teams that started off really strong. Now they're kind of fighting in the middle of the pack. They're 12-9. Of course, Tyrese Maxey has emerged as a clear star. He's putting up elite numbers in scoring, playmaking, and consistency. They have Edgecombe, who's right up there with the rookie rankings. Feels like a veteran already. And he had a game-winning putback in the 99-98 win over Golden State Warriors recently. So he is making an impact for sure. On the nights they click, Philly is really fun to watch with Maxey and Edgecombe leading. They have their role players. They have George and Embiid kind of awkwardly filling in when they can. So I think for them, it's like how much can George and their big guy contribute throughout the rest of the season. I think that's going to dictate their ceiling, or if they're just going to be kind of at 500. We'll see. The other team that was supposed to be much better, but is languishing back in the East, the Cavs, 13-10. Everyone picked them near the top. And really, the injuries are the important reason. All-star guard Darius Garland isn't still 100%. Jared Allen's out. Guard Sam Morril signed a long-term deal this season. He's still sidelined. Max Strus has yet to play this season. The list goes on. They've really struggled against teams that play fast, attack and transition, and punish them on the offensive glass and the rebounds. They've got some struggles. They've got some things to figure out. Once they get healthy, then we'll really know what's up with them. The rest of the East, you got the Hawks, the Bucks, who have been in the news about Giannis, of course. The Bulls off to a rough start. Hornets, these are all teams that are kind of like 3-4. Hornets are 10 games under 500. The Nets, Pacers, and Wizards are just at the bottom, and not really worth talking about. Because the Hornets are so bad, I have yet to see Con Knippel in any of the games, even though he's really battling Flag and Edgecombe for Rookie of the Year. I just refuse to watch the Hornets, but I might have to break that. But that's the Eastern Conference. The Western Conference, I think is probably more interesting they're just beating up on each other, except for one team. OKC is off to a 21-1, possibly a historic run this early in the season. They're absolutely rolling. They're by far the best team in the West. They dominate with an elite defense, efficient offense, and just a real tight cohesion across the floor. They're probably not just playoff favorites. They're probably the title favorite, unless someone can step up and stop them. And that's what the rest of these teams below them are trying to do. The Lakers are at 16-5. They're trying to show they can compete with anyone when they're at their best. Obviously, they have had a couple players step up, no more so than Austin Reeves this season, who became a first option out of necessity for a while. But there's some concerns. I didn't like how casual they were about getting back in transition defense against the Suns, which is the game I watched. The Suns made them look old and slow and kind of dispassionate about defense in particular. That's not a good sign. Maybe the early success could be a little bit fluky. They probably will drop a little bit. One big deal just happened last night. After 1,297 games, LeBron James' 10-point scoring streak ended with a Lakers buzzer beater. It wasn't his buzzer beater, though. LeBron, drove to the court, drove to the middle of the court with the last few seconds, but I got to hand it to him. He passed the ball to make the right play when he could have drove and kept going and got his own bucket or attempt to keep that streak alive. Hachimura won the game with a big 3 over the Raptors. So, if the streak's got to end, you end playing the right way. And while I'm not the biggest LeBron fan, I am a fan of his career. And he made the right play to win the game for his team. I think the most compelling team in the West are the Rockets. They're 14-5. I think they've been one of the most formidable teams so far. They rank 2nd in offensive rating, 3rd in defensive rating. We already talked about that's a key sign. That team's a playoff team, but both are really high rankings, so that bodes well for them. And they're currently the 3rd seed. The Rockets are still on pace for one of their best seasons as Sengun has leveled up to become an all-star caliber player for sure. Amen Thompson and Reed Shepherd are still elevating their games. Shepherd has been playing out of his mind recently. And their growth this season is obviously a major storyline. And then you have KD, who is an efficient scoring machine. And I think he's so efficient, he makes the rest of the team more efficient with better shots and spacing. That was the idea with him on the Suns last year. The Houston Rockets currently have a 38.2% offensive rebounding rate, and that's actually dropped from like 42% earlier in the season. And they are shooting 43.5% from 3, both of which would rank first among all teams in the 21st century. So they have a rebounding rate that's ridiculous. Their efficiency from 3 was ridiculous. That's the spacing coming to bear. The Houston Rockets also run a very tall lineup. On opening night, it was the tallest lineup in NBA history at 6 foot 10.2 inches. And they still run that lineup quite a bit. So that's what's contributing to their offensive rebounding rate. They are turning misses into makes. Missing a shot is one of their best offensive plays because they're getting all these rebounds. Now, can they compete with the Thunder? That's really the question. And it's historic with this team in general, beyond this year's team and the players involved. Can they compete with an elite team that's going to potentially run away with the season? They had the same problem with the Warriors. They would get up against the Warriors would win. Now they have OKC in front of them, which is a little unfair from a franchise perspective, but that's the reality that the Rockets are facing. I look for them to make a move, something for maybe a little bit more perimeter shooting, and maybe even something splashier to put them over the edge, because I think they know, and everyone in the West knows, if you're close and you might be able to compete with OKC, why not? Why not go all in? And I look for the Rockets to do that. Two teams that are kind of similar in the middle. They both have an exceptional big, and that's the Spurs and the Nuggets. The Spurs look like a tough out. They're scrappy, disciplined, capable of upsetting big teams if things go right. They're, of course, weathering the Wemby injury, and his return will dictate the future of this team, both in timing and in quality. They've been surprisingly stout without him, but they can't compete with some of these other teams in the West unless Wemby comes back. That's just the reality. The Nuggets, obviously everything goes around Joker. They've shown they can hang. They have solid scoring, a revamped coaching and management, and they are reasserting themselves as a contender for sure. There's some troubling things though. They don't have depth, or at least as much depth as it looked like when the season started. They haven't really found a stand-in for Aaron Gordon, and he's kind of like the do-everything wing who really kind of holds their defense together. Since Gordon went down with a hamstring issue, the Nuggets' defensive identity has just kind of gone away. With him available for 12 of their first 13 games, they started 10-3 and owned the league's third-best defense. In the 7 games since, during which he played only 3 minutes, they've gone 4-3 while slipping to one of the league's worst defensive units. Now coaching can help with that. They'll figure it out a little bit. But even an offense powered by Nikola Jokic at an MVP level can't really cover for that kind of defensive drop-off. And it certainly doesn't help that Christian Braun and Jamal Murray have been added to the injury list recently. So those injuries are going to dictate the middle part of the season for the Nuggets, and how far they drop or how much they can stay afloat in that time is really going to set the tone for their playoff, not their playoff chances. They're going to make the playoffs, just where they sit in the end. Another peculiar team that has a lot of potential in the West, the Timberwolves, are 14-8, so a decent record, but not great. They have some real problems in the backcourt. The point guard spot has been shaky So much so that Dante DiVincenzo has been bumped into the starting lineup, replacing Mike Conley, who's now 38. And the team is still trying to figure out if and where Rob Dillingham fits. And that's tricky considering they paid a steep price to draft him 8th in 2024. What makes all this even weirder is that the Wolves look like a contender in so many ways. They started their starting 5 destroys teams, 16 points per 100 possessions. And Anthony Edwards, of course, still every year kind of levels up. And this is after making the Western Conference Finals 2 years in a row. At 13-8, they have only a net rating of 0.7. So that's good, but that's not like amazing. So they have some work there. And the question is really, what can they do about it? They'll be linked to every guard on the trade market, but with a bloated payroll and no future first rounders to kind of leverage, making a real upgrade won't be as simple. So I think they're generally going to be stuck with the players they have. I think that's not necessarily bad. They know what to do. I think they're going to compete. They do have Edwards at the end of games, that a lot of teams wish they had. He's, can be unstoppable even when doubled and blitzed, which is remarkable at an elite level. So the Timberwolves are probably going to end up where they are. Just how much refinement can they get and squeeze out of their best players? How good can Anthony Edwards be? That's really a question. That's a bigger question for American basketball in general. Is Anthony Edwards our best player? Can he be our best player? And how will that impact the Wolves? The other team kind of in this mix, maybe a little inflated because of recent success, the Phoenix Suns. They sit at a surprising 13-9. I could talk a lot about the Suns. I did a recent podcast that was really just focused on them. The big breakthrough, of course, is Colin Gillespie. He had another big night against the Lakers. The Suns play OKC tonight in the semifinal of the Emirates Cup. OKC's favorite for sure. Can the Suns play them tough? They just did the other day, losing by 4. They had a chance to win that game. But you have to be perfect at the end of a game to beat OKC. Can the Suns do it? Yeah. Is it going to be hard? Absolutely. They're going to have to play a great game. Are they capable? Of course they can. But they have some injuries that they're dealing with too, with Booker sitting out with an injury. And they did get Dunn back, which I think helps the Suns more than most national analysts might realize. Dunn really holds that defense together. His long arms and blocking is just and one-on-one man on-ball defense is really impressive. So the Suns are surprising people. They play full court. Their defense is tough. They play as a unit, but they need Booker back to be successful. The funny thing here is when you're on the local team, Reddits and Facebook groups and whatever, a lot of the casuals are just like, Booker, he's not very good this year. What happened to him? And it's like the guy's just getting, blitzed all the time, and he's making the right play, and the Suns are doing well. Like, just leave him alone. He's making the right play. He's doing the right thing. His 3-point shooting has been off, but that comes and goes with some players. He's always found it. I think the groin injury that he has, it doesn't look serious. I think he's going to come back and start shooting the lights out. That's my prediction, and I think the Suns are going to be really tough. But they have a really tough schedule for the rest of the way, so they're going to need it. The rest of the teams in the West, you have the Grizzlies, Trailblazers, 9-13, Jazz 8-13, Mavs 8-15, Clippers 6-16, Kings 5-17, and the Pelicans. We won't even talk about them. 3 wins, 20, probably the worst franchise in the league, not just on the court, but as a business. Of those teams, I earlier said I thought the Clippers would come out of it, but I think they have bad mojo now with how they handled Chris Paul at the end of his career. I think there's probably about 17 different ways they could have handled that. Even if he was truly being a problem in the locker room, there are ways to get around that and handle it that aren't so public and damaging to, that's one situation where the Clippers look bad. Chris Paul looks bad, but the team looks bad too. And I think that could have been avoided. That's bad mojo as well. I don't know. That doesn't look good. So really, if I had to guess now, I'd say probably with Nico Harrison getting fired, the Mavs of that group in the bottom of the West probably have the best chance of rising. I think perhaps now that Mavs coach Jason Kidd isn't trying to prove a point with Cooper Flagg bringing it up, maybe they can use Cooper Cooper in a little bit more effective way and put together a stronger rest of the season, I think that's going to be what happens. But they have Nembhard at the point recently playing really, really well, like just in his first game. I think that bodes well for the Mats. I think they're going to jump up there and compete for those playoff spots. The rest of the teams, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe the Grizzlies, if Morant can get it together, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen either. But it's early. Who knows? We'll see how it goes. But that's the way things are sitting in the Western Conference too. Like I said, I think some teams are poised to rise a little bit. Some teams are poised to drop. I think some things will start to shake out, and we'll see how things are looking halfway through. But that's our Q1 status report for the NBA. I hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, I try not to edit these. I just put them together and put them out there. Hope that covers some things. Some games to look forward to are the semifinal games, the 4 semifinal games in the Emirates Cup. While they are just regular season games, the Cup does make the teams play a little bit harder. I think they're fun to watch. I think people bought in and are trying to win. It's one of those things that if your team's not in it, who cares? But if your team's in it, the teams care. They're playing for a little bit of dough, and I think it shows. They seem to play those differently. The games are coached a little bit differently, and they're really fun. So check those out this weekend. And that'll do it for this episode of Nice J. Thanks for joining us. I always ask like, share, rate, review, all that kind of stuff. Just support me if you can. Share the links with a hooper that you know. And remember, shoot or shoot. See ya.